End of chapter questions for behavioral biases. These are fairly straightforward, so we shouldn't have to do a lot of work here. Under-diversified portfolios are not a potential implication of which of the following behavioral biases: representativeness, illusion of control, or confirmation. And this one we can get to by process of elimination. Confirmation bias would lead us to hold on to positions far longer than is warranted by the fundamentals, or even add to losing positions, because we tend to seek out confirming evidence. So if a stock is retreating, we look for confirming evidence. We become even more convinced that we're right. We buy even more. That would lead to under-diversifying. Illusion of control, same thing. We believe that we have certain control over, let's say, the company we work for, that we can influence outcomes, and we would tend to hold more stock than is prudent, resulting in undiversified portfolios. So A is the one we don't eliminate. The advice, don't confuse brains with a bull market, is aimed at mitigating which of the following behavioral biases. In this one we can go directly to overconfidence. When we buy stocks, they go up, we sell them, we make money, we feel good, we buy more, they go up, we sell them, we start to think, I'm pretty good at this, I know exactly what I'm doing. Meanwhile, in a bull market, 80 to 90% of stocks go up anyways. That you could pick stocks at random and they would go up. A book called A Random Walk Down Wall Street cites an experiment where a group of monkeys threw darts at a wall, and there were tickers on the wall, and whatever ticker it landed on, they'd create a portfolio. And the monkey's portfolio tended to outperform about 80% of the experts that were involved in the experiment. So don't confuse brains with a bull market, right? Status quo bias is least similar to which of the following behavioral biases, and you'll recall that status quo resulted in maintaining positions largely out of laziness, largely out of inertia, just whatever, everything is fine, no need to change it. So you weren't maintaining the positions as a result of conscious choice, and that was contrasted with endowment and regret aversion, where you did continue to hold the same positions. However, it was conscious choice. It may be incorrect, but it was a conscious choice. The status quo bias is least similar to confirmation. Which strategy would best mitigate or prevent endowment bias? And you'll recall endowment bias was valuing an asset that you own higher than the price you would pay for it if you didn't own it. A, actively seeking out information that challenges existing beliefs. Yeah, you read that, you go, well, okay. When new information is presented, asking, how does this information change my forecast? It doesn't sound right, but I'll put a question mark there. Asking, would you buy this security today at the current price? Yes, there it is. I recall that. Testing to see whether or not you would buy the security for the same price that you currently are asking for it. Jun Park, CFA, works at a hedge fund. Most of Park's colleagues are also CFA charter holders. At an event with recent university graduates, Park comments, most CFA charter holders work at hedge funds. Park's remarks exhibit which behavioral bias? Well, he works at a hedge fund. He's got a CFA charter. His colleagues work at hedge funds, they have a CFA charter, and then he's extrapolating to the charter holders in general say they work at hedge funds. Whereas it probably would have been better to say most employees of hedge funds have a charter. He's saying all charter holders or most charter holders work at hedge funds. That's availability bias because that's all he can see. I have a charter, I'm at a hedge fund. My colleagues are at hedge funds, they have charters. The charter holders go to hedge funds. In the 1980s, Japan was viewed by many financial market participants as the model economy. Although its growth began to decelerate sharply by 1990, it was not until the mid to late 1990s that financial market participants' GDP forecasts were consistently achieved. By taking several years to adapt their forecasts to the lower growth environment, financial market participants exhibit which behavioral bias? Slow to update their forecasts. That is conservatism. All right, questions 7 through 9 deal with this narration up here. So we'll repeat that narration on the screen when we get to 7, 8, and 9. The reading says 7 to 10, but 10 has nothing to do with this. And I'm going to skip the pronunciation of the names. I'm just going to say this person, that person. So this person is a portfolio manager for an international bank where she advises high net worth clients. She is meeting with a new client, that person, a 40-year-old surgeon with 4 million euro across various accounts and a salary of 500,000 euro per annum. She explains to him that he has 4 accounts at 4 different banks, each with specific sources and uses of funds as shown in the following table. 4 bank accounts, sources of deposits, salary, bonus, portfolio interest, portfolio dividends, salaries used for living expenses, bonus for charitable gifts, portfolio interests, savings for retirement, dividends, mother's living expenses. Based on the description of how this guy manages his finances as outlined in Exhibit 1, this guy most likely exhibits the behavioral bias of, what does this look like to you? Different sums of money in different accounts for different purposes, right? Treating them all as different. That is mental accounting. Which of the following is a likely consequence of this guy's approach to managing his finances? Concentrated portfolio positions. When we went through mental accounting, we did not see that as one of the outcomes, and there's no reason to believe that any of these accounts would hold concentrated positions. It doesn't say anything in the narration. Foregone opportunities to reduce risk by combining assets with low correlations. Yes, because you have assets sitting over here, then you have assets sitting over here, you have assets sitting over here and over here. Well, there could be correlations between them that if you took a more holistic view, you might not have either replication of assets across portfolios, or you may hold different assets. So there we go. We don't have to worry about C, excessive trading. There's nothing in the narration that suggests that there's any excessive trading going on. B. Number 9, what strategy should she use to recommend to him? She being the advisor. Keep written records of investment decisions. For mental accounting, that doesn't seem like it would fix mental accounting. Ask questions such as, is the decision the result of focusing on a net gain or a net loss position? That sounds more like framing. I'll get rid of that. It must be this. Aggregate all accounts and portfolios into a single spreadsheet. Yes. Optimize over all of your assets first, then determine the location where you're going to place those assets second. Which of the following individual behavioral biases is most strongly associated with market bubbles? And for market bubbles, we had cited, I think, 4 or 5 of them. Overconfidence was one of them. Confirmation and self-attribution was another. Regret aversion was another. And anchoring. So there's our overconfidence. We did not cite representativeness or framing. The halo effect, which may be evident in financial market participants' assessments of a company with a history of high revenue growth, is a form of which behavioral bias? Well, halo effect, what we're saying here is, well, if we have a company with a good growth record, it must be a good investment. That is representativeness, right? All of the following are reasons that an apparent deviation from the efficient market hypotheses might not be anomalous, except for. So we're looking for a reason that would not suggest it's anomalous. The abnormal returns represent compensation for exposure to risk. Yes, if we expand our factor model to include more risk factor exposures, we might find out that it is a rewarded factor. Changing the asset pricing model makes the deviation disappear, makes the deviation to disappear. I think that means causes the deviation to disappear. That would be that means that the hypothesis might not be anomalous. We're looking for an except for. These would support the first part of the statement. The deviation is well known or documented. Well, then it's anomalous, right? If it's well known or documented, there we go. Investment managers incentivized or accountable for short-term performance. Pay attention to that, right? They're incentivized or accountable for short-term performance by current and prospective clients is a potentially rational explanation for which of the following? Home bias bubbles or value stocks outperforming growth stocks. Well, this is short-term performance. This is more of a long-term outcome. Nothing about home bias says that sticking domestically will lead to greater short-term performance. It is bubbles. You end up chasing performance and you want to be in something that's hot because you have to make short-term gains. Momentum can partly be explained by which of the following behavioral biases. I don't know why there is a comma there. Momentum, comma, can be partly explained. It doesn't seem to flow very well, but I've just taken screenshots right from the reading, so who knows why. Momentum can partly be explained by the following behavioral biases except, and when we presented momentum, we pointed to it being supported by availability and hindsight bias, hindsight being reducing regret of missing out by buying past winners. So there is availability, there is regret. Nothing about home bias or buying domestically suggests that we are perhaps engaging in momentum chasing. All of the following are reasons that the historical outperformance of value stocks versus growth stocks may not be anomalous, except A. Abnormal returns represent compensation for risk exposures, such as the heightened risk of value stocks to suffer distress during downturns. Yes, that is a traditional finance argument. Companies with strong historical growth rates are viewed as good investments. Well, that is representativeness. That's a behavioral bias. This is a behavioral finance argument, not a traditional finance argument. With higher expected returns and the characteristics, that would be one of the except. So there's our answer. We can put an X here, actually. There's our answer. Let's get rid of C. The deviation disappears by incorporating a three-factor asset pricing model. We can eliminate that because we're looking for an exception to explaining outperformance not being anomalous. And if the deviation disappears by incorporating a three-factor asset model, it may not be anomalous. We're looking for the except, and there it is right there, B.